Hello and welcome to Security Scan. I am Vishal Dahiya, and this week we will talk about MH-60 Romeo SEAHAWK helicopter. The United States State Department has recently approved the sale of 24 multi-role MH-60 Romeo SEAHAWK helicopters to India. The final deal, with an estimated cost of $2.4 billion, is likely to be signed later this year. Indian Navy had identified multi-role helicopters as one of the top critical operational necessity, and their acquisition has been pending for more than a decade now. The MH-60 helicopters can operate from frigates, destroyers, cruisers and aircraft carriers as well. They are designed for hunting submarines and ships and carry out search and rescue operations at sea. These helicopters will replenish the aging fleet of Sea King and boost Indian Navy's capability to perform anti-submarine and anti-surface warfare missions. So for more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of guests today in the studio. Let us start by introducing them to you, beginning with we have with us Vice Admiral retired Shekhar Sinha as a defense expert with us. Then we also have with us Dr. Lieutenant General V.K. Saxena, the distinguished fellow from VIF, and we have with us Commodore Anil J. Singh, retired, the Vice President of Indian Maritime Foundation as well. Welcome, all of you gentlemen. Let me begin with you, Admiral Sinha, to take put the entire thing in perspective here. When we talk about multi-role helicopters, when we talk about Indian Navy's requirement, and Navy, as I just mentioned, had made it quite clear that this is one of the topmost critical necessities for the Indian Navy to have these multi-role helicopters.
No, I'm glad, Vishal, you said that it is a very critical requirement, and you also said that it is a decade-old requirement. You are very right. The first time we made a proposal for replacement of the Sea King 42 and 42 Alpha, which are the predecessors of the 42 present 42 Bravo. We also have 42 Charlie, which is for the commando helicopter. But unfortunately, we could not reach the conclusion. And first of all, I must compliment the government here to having actually taken it up with the US government to sign the acceptance, and now the contract will be signed. So I think that the Sea King 42 and 42 Alpha, we have run out of them. We only have 42 Bravos. So we are short, and we are short by many. And those tasks are being completed or done by the P8I fixed wing aircraft. But fixed wing aircraft get airborne from shore, and they come and spend the time on task depending upon fuel. The helicopter has the liberty to take off from the ship and go and hover in a particular area where they think the submarine could be, and try and locate it.
Just like the MH-60, which can take off from frigates,
absolutely,
cruisers.
and just like the MH-60. In fact, when MH-60 was actually identified, it was being built by the Sikorsky, and now it has been taken over by some other company. The problem was the price. The then government thought the price is too high, whereas the Navy has been constantly saying that the price is all right. This is the price because the technology is too high. And therefore, I am happy that, the initial requirement was 12, but in the meantime, the ships have been commissioned, but they have not been given the SW helicopters because they haven't got enough. So now this is going to fill a big void, and it will add to our anti-submarine capability. As you know that our adversaries are operating submarines left, right and center, coming out of the choke points, Malacca Strait, Gulf of Aden and the Straits of Hormuz.
Okay.
So now the ship can launch it, keep it on task for whatever the endurance is, come back, fuel and go back.
Okay.
So we have
so this is going to be a big boost. Let's bring in General Saxena here. And General Saxena, I would like to bring you on the tech part of the MH-60 Romeo. What does it have in terms of its features, capabilities, which will add that muscle to the Indian Navy?
Like Admiral Shekhar Sinha has just mentioned, this is one of the very special machine. First of all, you mentioned a word in your opening statement, multi-role. What multi-role? Multi-role really in terms of anti-ship, anti-submarine, search and rescue operations, in terms of logistic support, vertical replenishment, personal transfer, a lot of things. But what is most important about this machine is the technical muscle of this machine. Just take the glass cockpit. The glass cockpit of this is a multi-mission digital cockpit which shows the mission profile as well as the flight profile right on the glass cockpit, and also it is capable of day vision, that is if the sunlight is falling, also is capable of night vision. Then come to the next capability is the navigation capability of this, a fantastic navigation capability. It has got a suite of Northrop Grumman. It got a dual embedded inertial navigation system as well as a global positioning system. And for detection and tracking, it has got a Raytheon suite of forward-looking infrared as well as it has got the laser rangefinder. As regards the communication, it's a very versatile machine. It has got a Link 16 communication which is compatible with all NATO in terms of voice, in terms of UHF, VHF, SATCOM. Also, it's got a data in terms of a Ku-band. Now, in addition to that, what makes the helicopter, the teeth of the helicopter is the weapons. It has got 4 strong points. On these strong points are carried the missiles and torpedoes. It can carry a fantastic amount of ammunition. It can carry A4 of AGM-114 Hellfire missile of range 8 kilometers. It can also carry AK-54 and 46 and 52 torpedoes, lightweight torpedoes. It also has a 7.62 millimeter gun for self-protection. Another thing which increases the survivability of this helicopter is the electronic warfare suit carried on board. You know, electronic warfare suit in terms of this helicopter is very strong. It has got a missile warning. If any missile is homing onto this helicopter, it get a warning. It has got a laser warning system. It has got a infrared jamming, missile jamming system. It has also got the other system of passive jamming like windows and chaff. Now, one more most important point, let me make it here, is the radar of this helicopter. The radar of this helicopter is the ISR radar, inverse synthetic aperture radar. A normal synthetic aperture radar produces an unidentifiable pixel on the which unidentifiable, whereas the inverse synthetic aperture radar produces a specific 2D image which can actually make out where the target is and what sort of a target, where I must home on a missile. So, and survivability, you know, the rotor of this can take on a hit of 23 millimeter. Most of it, most of the surfaces are double and triple redundant. And finally, the rotor blades can fold down and the tail plane is hinged, which reduces the signature of this helicopter tremendous. That's why sir was mentioning that why this is so special and why no country is coming forward to say we'll make it here. There are countries who are making Kamov 260. There are countries who will continue to make many helicopters.
So there are a lot of high-end technology which is packed
here. It's a high-tech machine. And it is a machine which has entered US not very far, just 6 years back, and very much strong.
So quite a lot of muscle this MH-60 Romeo packs. So let's bring in Commander Singh here. Commander Singh, from your perspective, you know, the kind of features which it has, as explained by General Saxena, how will it be, you know, very useful to the Indian Navy in carrying out its ASW operations and otherwise as well?
As brought out by both Admiral Sinha and General Saxena, it's a great asset to the Navy. It's a long felt requirement. The Sea Kings gave us fantastic service for more than 3 decades. They were really the mainstay of the workhorses of the fleet ASW capability. And I think the MH-60R, being a very sophisticated aircraft, a very modern aircraft, is going to be in service for many more years and is going to provide us a great deal of tactical, operational and strategic capability at sea. From a tactical perspective, I think its biggest asset is its anti-submarine warfare capability. The Indian Navy today is a blue water force with full spectrum capability. So a good ASW helicopter is integral. We've got the finest warships in the Indian Navy. We've got the Delhi class destroyers. We've got the P-28 corvettes. We've got the Type 17 stealth frigates. But what we were lacking was a helicopter. Because for whatever reasons, many reasons, as Admiral Sinha brought out, there was a delay in this program taking shape. But now that we've taken the bull by the horns, and I'm very impressed that in August the AON was given, in November the request was made, and in end of March, early April, the State Department has approved it and the contract will be signed by the end of this year. And
that's quite fast.
And I understand within 18 to 24 months the first helicopters will arrive. That's a remarkable pace of defense procurement, if I may say so. But from its main asset, its anti-submarine capability, today the Indian Ocean is going to be the hotbed for submarine operations of the future. We already know the Chinese are here. The Pakistanis are going to get many more submarines. They're going to transit through the choke points. A submarine is not killed by another submarine. A submarine is killed by effective anti-submarine capability. Now you have these fantastic ships. What they needed was teeth in the form of an ASW helicopter. A 10-ton helicopter like this can operate fairly out at sea. It can, when there's a carrier battle group moving, it provides the early warning about submarines. It provides, puts a submarine under a great deal of pressure. Because if you have a helicopter hovering above a submarine, the submarine doesn't know the helicopter is hovering. He doesn't know where he's going to dip his sonar. So the submarine is really under pressure because he doesn't know, and he has no weapon to counter it. He cannot shoot down a helicopter. Now there are missiles being developed, but they're still they're not operational yet. So from that perspective, and secondly, what the helicopter can do is it can pass on this information about a possible submarine back to the fleet. So the fleet or a carrier battle group which is moving can be diverted away from a submarine threat. And what is in the naval parlance is called a search and attack unit can be detached with anti-submarine capability and come and prosecute the submarine. And the submarine inherently underwater moves slowly. So even if he tries to get away from there, he can only move to a restricted area because ships do much higher speeds. So from that perspective, that was a capability which was lacking. Our carrier battle group or our surface ships were vulnerable to submarines. They'll be a lot less vulnerable now. Secondly, at choke points, it will be a very effective deterrent for submarines transiting through that and thereafter monitoring their movements. So from that perspective, I think it's a fantastic platform to have. From a larger strategic perspective, for a blue water navy which has got a mid-ocean deployment capability, we need aircraft with standoff weapon capability, standoff communication capability. It's got a link system. It will be part of our network-centric warfare structure. So there's lots this aircraft by itself is going to bring to the Indian Navy's force at sea.
Okay, let's bring in Admiral Sinha. Admiral Sinha, as Commodore Singh pointed out, from the strategic perspective, we look at the dynamics are changing rapidly in the Indian Ocean region and in India's backyard as well. And with Indian Navy being the blue water navy, as all of you have pointed out, this augmentation of the lethal capabilities is something which was very much required, and it has come at the right time.
You said it right, and whatever Commodore Ajay Singh, he's a submariner, and what he says that if submarines are really worried about a helicopter on top, and the technical points which General Saxena mentioned, the big issue is that the Link 16 and the communication equipment are interoperable with all other countries with whom we are doing a very serious exercise on the strategic sort of level. For example, in Malabar, we have the Japanese, we have US, and we have to operate together. And if we have to be of some relevance, some credibility, then I think the interoperability between the submarine and helicopter and aircraft and ships is one very important issue, as was brought out by Commodore Ajay Singh. And I think that it's a great thing to have. The second issue is that, as General Saxena pointed out, the anti-surface capability and the maritime patrol, the maritime patrol, or rather maritime reconnaissance radar that it has. What we are buying, I believe, is the latest version of the helicopter, which has missile which is in excess of 100 kilometers range. And it will probably, from Hellfire, we might progress to the Penguin missiles. So it is not that you can only do anti-submarine work. You have an anti-surface capability. If the ship is operating all by itself, as was mentioned by Commodore Ajay Singh, it is a full unit by itself. The helicopter and ship becomes a very credible unit to take on a surface ship and also a submarine. So it provides a very big strategic reach to our Navy, and you can stop the vulnerability well before you become vulnerable to it.
General Saxena, how do you look at the bigger picture in terms of the overall strategic perspective when we are talking about, as both the gentlemen have put it here?
Sir, the bigger picture you have to start from 1965 to build up started from there. After 1965 war, while Pakistan gave emphasis to submarines and torpedoes, we started looking at the anti-submarine warfare capability. And within a matter of, let's say, few years, 6-7 years, we had our first brought about that aircraft Seeking 42 series started to come. Fantastic helicopter, ASW capability, range 208 kilometers, all of weight 9707 kg is a big weight, and a very big range of 1230 kilometers, 1230 kilometers. But what happened? From 1965 to 1971, it came July 1971. till about 90s, 92, all the spares which were there were free flowing and were moving, and the helicopter were being sustained. Then came Operation Shakti 1998, and the sanctions were applied by the US for giving spare parts of this helicopter. From there the trouble started really, and it was very difficult to maintain. Sir already brought out how it has become difficult, became difficult to even sustain an anti-submarine helicopter. We are cannibalizing and to make some machines available and to put them in the air by taking spare parts. Unfortunately, this technology is not in our country. We could not make it. That is where the bigger picture of requirement. Now we can have Dhruva. We have HAL Dhruva, but it is not an anti-submarine one. Sir was the fleet commander that time when he actually proved it that this is not an anti-submarine helicopter. We had Kamov series of helicopter, we have Chetak series of helicopter, we have any amount of helicopter, but none of them was anti-submarine. And therefore, what was lacking in the bigger picture, as the commander also brought out, is that we required a punch in the anti-submarine. Sir also brought out that between ship and some helicopter, between a fixed wing, we may have fixed wing, MiG-29, we may have Illusion, we may have P-81, everything. But what we required is a successor to Sea King. That is more important, and that is where this helicopter was required.
So this is the missing link.
One more thing, sir. 10 years. Why say 10 years? I'll say 50 years. Because 71 from now is pretty far, 45 years. But the problem is that nothing moves in procurement circle at the pace at which Commodore was bringing out now. But earlier, 10 years before this process has started, I was a party to this. I was in the service that time and was a part of this, hearing this procurement case going on, that how an RFP was issued, the case was there, multi-competitor bid was there, but it could not go through. Finally, the FMS has come through at a fantastic rate and pace. Sir talked about a missile, is the naval strike missile, 185 kilometers. I will not say whether we are getting or not getting, that's a classified matter, but that is a missile which this helicopter can carry on board. Sir, that is a bigger picture, is there was all capability. There is a fixed wing, there was a utility helicopter, there is everything. But what was missing, where our tooth was aching, was our Sea King was dying, were difficult to cannibalize. We required an anti-submarine warfare capability. This capability in terms of the state-of-the-art helicopter comes about. That is the bigger picture.
Commander Singh, from your perspective, and as all of you have pointed out, and all of us are aware as well, it took us 10 years to get hold of these multi-role helicopters. It's a very crucial link as well. From here onwards, but we're getting 24 only. Is that going to be enough? Or what do you believe from the end user's perspective would be the requirements in the future?
The NMRH program, the Naval Multi-Role Helicopter program, as has been brought out, has been in the pipeline for more than a decade. And the effort always was that this will be built indigenously. We'll get 16 helicopters from abroad and thereafter build the remaining 108, I think, in India. Now, this obviously, despite our best efforts, did not really take off for two reasons. One, of course, the reluctance of people to part with technology of the kind we wanted. And secondly, the NMRH, as was brought out to me by somebody in industry once, is perhaps the most complex rotary wing platform in the air. And to start building helicopters in India, starting from the most complex down to the simple, is a difficult task. So while these 24 are certainly not sufficient, they are just about an interim measure meant to offset our initial capability deficit which is forming. The ultimate endeavor obviously is to build the NMRH in India, the 100 odd that are required, and not only 100 odd, and then an ongoing series production. But I think this will be the start point, this will be the launch. We learn from this, we learn technologies from this, and industrial tie-ups will take place. So I think this is the start of what is going to be the ultimate NMRH program of the Navy. But the important thing was to get some now. We were at the point where we needed them urgently, and I think that requirement is going to be met by these 24.
Admiral Sinha, from your perspective, the future roadmap as far as Indian Navy is concerned, specifically the helicopter requirements.
I think it's a great thing to happen, in short, and I feel that the airframe is also capable of meeting a lot of the army tasks. So if the helicopter is built here, I'm sure that the army will find enough tasking for this helicopter. If you just take out the ASW part of it, they can have, instead of the anti-surface missile, they can have a anti-tank missile. They can have lift capability of shifting the troops in the actual battle area. So I think, I feel that there's a lot of future. And if the Army and the Air Force and the Navy, they come together for a high-tech platform, this is the right platform. Unfortunately, it did not happen in the time that we wanted, and as both my co-panelists have spoken, that it was mainly to do that you required a lot of courage to say yes, and the money was quite large and you had to put things together. We tried to put things together, but regrettably it didn't work out. And as I said, I'm very happy that the government has taken a step which is moving much faster than what it moved in last 10 years.
Okay, and better late than never, since we have this here. General Saxena, from your point of view, the future roadmap which you look at.
So the future should look at future in a broad fashion. Naval future does not only remain with the helicopters. We are already talking about the naval version of HAL Tejas, sir. It is carrying out trials today in the shore-based test facility somewhere. I do not want to make it public. Also, we are looking at the MRMR. What is MRMR? The medium-range maritime reconnaissance helicopter. The RFP already stands issued, sir. And there are big players like EADS, like Dassault, like Embraer, which are on board. And not to forget the naval utility helicopter, 111 of them, 95 to be made in India. Imagine the capability increase. And as the Commodore brought out, there is no getting away from the fact that we require anti-submarine warfare capability as a standalone vertical, which vertical must be filled not only with this 24, but we must end up in a limited series production. This is the future of the helicopters and the fixed wing, which is bright and looks ahead.
Okay, it's bright and looks ahead as well. Concluding comments from you, Commodore Singh. From the end user's perspective, again, I'll ask, what have we achieved so far? What have we got? And in terms of, as explained by General Saxena as well, what are it, what the landmarks which we should be achieving in the near future to ensure that our Indian Navy's capability remains much higher and stronger?
Over the last few years, there have been a certain capability deficits which have occurred in the Navy because of delays in programs being addressed. But I think with these helicopters is one issue, submarines, minesweepers. What I'm happy is to say is that all these have started moving. They had almost reached a point of, there was inertia which was not really being overcome. But now in the last 1 year, one has seen a dynamic move. Budgets are restricted, we all know that. It's a guns versus butter debate in India always. But I think correctly prioritized, each of these requirements can be met over the next 5 or 7 or 10 years perhaps. Only thing is, it's got to be a focused attempt. The services, the ministry, the political leadership have all got to think alike, that the security of the nation comes first always and every time. India has a large role to play in the Indian Ocean. We are the predominant power. We want to be a regional power. If we have to be a regional power in the Indo-Pacific, which is largely a maritime-oriented space, then we need a powerful Navy, because for any maritime power, the Navy is its principal instrument of exercising that power. So I think the Navy the government has to look at the Navy in a very holistic sort of a manner. And of course, with more jointness coming in, there's a lot of interoperability that will happen. On a strategic level, we've started tying up with nations. 20 years ago, we used to consider an extra regional power in the Indian Ocean an enemy almost. We didn't want the Americans there. We didn't want anybody there. Today, we are working with everybody. We are exercising with, I think, half the world wants to exercise with the Indian Navy. We've just signed the logistics agreement, LEMOA. Now, just a few days ago, we signed the communication arrangement called COMCASA. That in itself will provide so much more interoperability between all the navies, as Admiral Shekhar Sinha mentioned, Japanese, Australian. The Australians operate the same helicopter. So I think in the larger strategic maritime narrative that is building up in this region, this helicopter and the Indian Navy's approach towards maritime security in the region is absolutely on the right track.
Okay, wonderful. So as our panelists have pointed out, that once the deal is finally signed, the MH-60 Romeo SEAHAWK helicopters, the multi-role helicopters, will provide that much needed boost to the Indian Navy's lethal capabilities and fill those missing gaps. But as our panelists also suggested, that a lot more needs to be done, and we are on the path to achieving those targets. We'll come back again next week with a different topic and different set of guests. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.